Hi, everybody. This is Patricia. You're joining us today for the Importance of Historic Designations webinar. We're just about to get started. Our agenda for today, we will first begin by introducing staff that is on the call and our organization on a whole. We will briefly review the details of the Nuestra Herencia grant application. We will talk about historic designations and why they are so important. And we will have an opportunity to answer any questions that you may have. First things first, who are we? My name is Patricia Zarate Singletary, and I am the Preservation Grants Manager at Latinos in Heritage Conservation. I'm joined today by two wonderful folks. First up, Selah.
Hi, everyone. Welcome. We are so glad that you're here, and thank you again for joining us today. My name is Selah Mota Casper, and I am the Executive Director of Latinos in Heritage Conservation. And I'm very honored to bring back a dear colleague who was a fellow with us previously and continues to work and engage with LHC, and someone that we very much appreciate. I will pass it on to Allison Soto Morales.
Hello, everyone. It's nice to have you all here and participate in this webinar. I'm very excited to share some of the research findings from last year that led to the importance of historic designations. And I look forward to sharing more information later on in this webinar.
Thank you both. So happy to have our team here today. Now, if you aren't familiar with Latinos in Heritage Conservation, we are the leading nonprofit dedicated to preserving Latinx places, stories, and cultural heritage across the United States. Our mission is to build a movement that affirms Latinx heritage through education, conservation, and leadership development. And our vision is a just world that values Latinx heritage, people, and places. Before we continue on with the presentation, I would like to make a brief note about why LHC uses the term Latinx. Our organization has embraced Latinx as a gender-inclusive way to refer to people of Latin American descent. We understand that Latinx identity is complex and diverse, and people use a wide variety of labels. Whether you use Latino, Latina, Hispanic, Chicano, Tejano, or any other label that identifies your culture and ethnicity, we are here to serve you. You do not need to use Latinx in order to engage with the work of LHC or to apply to our grant program. Language is fluid and ever-changing, and we do not pretend to be the ultimate authority on this matter. Thank you for allowing me to speak to that, and we are always open for feedback. So before we get into today's topic, we are going to do a brief review of the basics of the Nuestra Herencia grant program. We've had several other webinars that dive into the details, but the main things you need to know today are that Nuestra Herencia is the nation's first grant program dedicated to funding Latinx heritage projects. We have $600,000 in annual funding, and the program's goal is to empower grassroots, Latinx-focused, nonprofit organizations and community groups to protect and celebrate Latinx heritage. Preserving Latinx history and heritage is very much the focus of this grant program. We wouldn't be able to do that without the support of our wonderful partners. The grant program is made possible by the generous support of the Andrew W. Mellon Foundation in partnership with the Social Impact Fund. The Mellon Foundation has dedicated $1.8 million to this grant program for over 3 years. To be eligible for this grant, meaning that you can apply and be considered for funding, the organization that you apply on behalf of must be a 501c3 nonprofit, or fiscally sponsored, and must be Latinx-led or serve Latinx communities. The Nuestra Herencia grant program has a number of specific funding goals. These funding goals identify our priorities when it comes to evaluating and funding projects. The goals are built into the rubric that we use to score applications. You can read them in full on our website. But the goal we are going to focus on today is nominating Latinx sites to historic registers. Before we can explain why this is such an important goal, let's start with the basics. Allison is going to tell us what historic designation means.
Thank you, Patricia. I'd like to begin by giving a brief overview of what historic designations are. They are a way to officially recognize the importance of physical sites that have either historical, architectural, or cultural significance. Across the country, on the next slide, we'll see that there are various levels of historic designations from the local level all the way to the federal level. While designation programs and the criteria needed to be listed at the local and state level vary across the country, I'm going to be focusing on my own historic designation processes, starting with the local. Since I'm based in Los Angeles, starting at the local level, we would be using the City of Los Angeles City of Los Angeles Historic Cultural Monument designations. Under this designation, some of the criteria required for being listed is that there is no requirement that the resource must be a certain age for it to be nominated, but it must be associated with important events of national, state, or local history, or must exemplify significant contributions to the broad cultural, economic, or social history of the nation, state, city, or community. It can also be associated with the lives of historic personages important to national, state, city, or local history, or embody the distinctive characteristics of a style, type, period, or method of construction, or represents a notable work of a master designer, builder, or architect whose individual genius influenced their age. Going to the state level, which in my instance would be California, we have California historic landmarks, which are buildings, structures, sites, or places that have been determined to have historical significance by meeting at least one of the following criteria. It must be the first, last, only, or most significant of its type in the state or within a large geographic area, or associated with an individual or group having a profound influence on the history of California, or a prototype of, or an outstanding example of a period, style, architectural movement, or construction, or is one of the more notable works or the best surviving work in the region of a pioneer architect, designer, or master builder. Finally, at the federal level, we have the national level, which would be the National Register of Historic Places, which represents sites of national importance, which also has its own separate set of criteria. In the following example of the Los Angeles Plaza Historic District, we see that this one site has been recognized at all three levels: local, state, and national. The site itself is the birthplace of the city of Los Angeles in what is now downtown LA. This district represents a rare, intact, and diverse group of historic and cultural resources that exemplify the founding and early growth of the city. It includes buildings and sites from the city's Spanish, Mexican, and early American periods, ranging from adobe buildings and large Victorian commercial blocks to Spanish Revival buildings of the early 20th century. Moving on to the next slide. As I noted earlier, the National Register is representative of sites of national importance that reflect the history of the nation. It initiated in 1966 through the National Historic Preservation Act, launching 3 separate tools to help preserve sites of importance to American history, including the National Register of Historic Places, State Historic Preservation Offices, and later in 1990, Tribal Historic Preservation Offices, and lastly, the Advisory Council on Historical Preservation. Focusing specifically on the National Register of Historic Places, to date, there are over 100,000 sites on the National Register. Of those, less than 1% are representative of Latinx communities. This disparity, despite the longstanding contributions of Latinx communities to the country, led to an equity study last year that I was a part of that built upon the research that SELA conducted more than a decade ago. From this first phase of research, we see that 0.58% of sites were representative of Latinx communities in 2014. And as of March 2025, that grew slightly to 0.65%, which still consists of less than 1,000 sites on the National Register. So why is that number so low? Findings from the equity study, which analyzed survey data collected from state historic preservation offices, point to more modern Latinx histories that have not been documented, often due to lack of funding, resources, and staff capacity. Sites that were or are of importance have been damaged by climate change or through the displacement of communities, leading to an undocumented heritage and causing these sites to become endangered or lost. There are also 2 criteria, including integrity and having the minimum age requirement of 50 years, that have impeded inclusion of sites representative of more recent histories. And lastly, many state historic preservation offices don't have the resources to engage with Latinx communities to document their more recent history. One example of an endangered site not far from Los Angeles Plaza Historic District is Silver Platter Bar, which was featured on Latino and Heritage Conservation's Endangered Latinx Landmarks. And it is the oldest extant Latinx LGBTQ plus nightlife space in the city. and it is endangered because of redevelopment, discriminatory preservation criteria, and gentrification that threaten its location. Some contributing factors also include rising rents and the current immigration enforcement that is endangering the community. So, how does Nuestra Herencia help? Nuestra Herencia provides funding to help bridge these gaps, which can include resources for surveying or documenting sites of value to communities by giving Latinx nonprofits resources to start the process, even if sites have not yet reached 50 years. Funding can help start the process of being listed at the local level, facilitating the process down the road for designations at the state or national level as well. And importance is on documenting and ensuring that history is not lost through this program. And now I will pass it back to Patricia.
Thank you, Allison. So, as Allison mentioned, Nuestra Herencia can be a great resource for having more sites related to Latinx history go onto historic designation registration lists. The way we do this is specifically through the project planning category. Project planning provides funding in the range of $10,000 to $40,000 for the development of essential planning documents. But you are also eligible to apply in this category if you want to prepare a nomination to propose a site to a local, state, or national registry. If you're interested in submitting a register nomination, this is the category for you. So the grant supports the actual nomination process, but also in preparing it for it to be a possibility. So we can support your gathering of documentation, if you don't mind me, gathering of documentation, but also through hiring a consultant that will help you through this larger process as well. We do this because it is a major goal of ours to increase the representation of Latinx sites on historic registries. We want to represent underrepresented and undertold stories. We're going to give it over to Selah now, who will talk about how you actually prepare a nomination.
Thank you, Patricia. We are, as we've shared, nominations are made at the local city level, so the city that you live in. It can be made at the state level, the state where you or the site is located, or at the federal level through the National Park Service. So nominations are typically made with the help of a historic preservationist or an architectural historian. And before you submit a nomination or discuss this, we highly encourage you to reach out to your state historic preservation office, your local city preservation office, or the National Park Service at the federal office just to discuss your project with them. In some cases, there is a process for you to submit a letter of intent to share the history, to share the site, to see if it would be eligible under the criteria that Allison discussed. The nomination, for the most part, requires historical research, and it's extensive research, and it's things that include when the site was built, who was it built by, the history and the evolution of the sites, photography, and other forms of documentation. A preservation consultant familiar with this type of research and the designation process can help speed up the process for you much faster than a property owner or a community member that is not familiar with this work. So we are going to go to the next slide here. And here we're asking, why do designations matter? Nominations matter because for many reasons, but officially, it helps to recognize historical sites at the federal, state, or local levels of government. These designations, they can range purposes. Sometimes they're tied to incentives, and sometimes they're aligned with things like regulations at your city level. But just because a site has not been designated, it does not mean that it lacks historical or cultural significance. More than likely, what it means is that there has not been an effort yet made to recognize the site um, and initiate this process at the local level by property owners, by community advocates, or preservation organizations. And then also, we know that Latinx sites are historically overlooked. Our history is overlooked, as Allison stated. So, most likely, sites that hold significance to your communities are not designated. Another reason why we think that historic designations matter is because we get to reframe history against things like attacks on Latinx history by current administrations or representation there at the local level at with Latinx history that will always be a part of American history. It also recognizes the representation and contributions of all communities. It helps to stand against the erasure of many groups. And then sometimes it can help protect a site from demolition. And it opens you up to funding opportunities like grants or historic tax credits. And I will pass it back over to Patricia.
Thank you so much, Sayla. I forgot that I also added in here for Sayla. So when we are talking about project planning and proposing that you want to hire a consultant to come on board and help with this process, in order to do that, you will need to submit an RFP, which is a request for proposal. Sayla is going to tell us a little bit about a RFP and how you then go about finding a consultant that could work with you on a nomination.
Thank you, Patricia. So, what is a request for proposal? An RFP, as you just heard, is a business document that announces a project, describes it, and solicits bid from a qualified contractor or consultant to complete the project. Basically, it's a report that you put out in public saying, here is a project that we are looking to do. We invite proposals to come in and qualified consultants that can then give you their RFP for your project. Next slide, please. And how do you find contractors or consultants? Well, with your RFP, you're going to define the project needs and the issue that's clear. So perhaps it is something like a historic designation or a construction project, a rehabilitation project. This will all be entailed in your RFP. You will distribute the RFP, and we encourage you to send it over to partners via email, through your newsletters, social media. LinkedIn is a really great resource. We also invite you to host a Q&A opportunity like we are doing right now, just to ensure that you're providing consistent and clear information to all bidders and answering any questions or help you think through things perhaps that were missed in the RFP. We also encourage you to score proposals using a standardized rubric. We have, for example, our rubric that we have created just to provide transparency and clarity to everyone that applies. And then also interview your finalist and select the best qualified contractor. Next slide, please.
Thank you, Sayla, for walking us through that. And if you want a little bit more information, be sure to watch our recording from the Category Deep Dive Capital Projects and Project Planning webinar. In just a moment, I'll be sure to add that to the chat. If you have any questions, please put them in the Q&A as we are approaching our question asking time. Before I go into this timeline, I'm going to request Sayla, could you find the equity study link for us so we can put it in the chat? Thank you, Sayla. So our timeline is as follows. The application is open and available for you to submit now via Submittable. It is due on February 13th. From February to May, we will be reviewing the applications, and we will announce the grant awards come June 2026. This is also when the grant period starts, meaning that's when your project can begin. The funds would be distributed in June. We have a few more webinars coming up in our Cycle 2 series. One is this Thursday, and it is a category deep dive on building organizational strength and community interpretation and engagement. We also have a webinar in January all about grant management titled After the Award. This will go over what happens if you are selected for funding. This year, I am also offering office hours, which is your way to get pretty one-on-one time with me and ask any questions that you may have. I'll put the links to register for all of this in the chat in just a moment. My next office hours will be on December 16th. These are public, so anyone who joins, you might hear the question of someone else, so just be aware. If you are looking specifically to talk to me individually, you are welcome to email me, and I'm putting that in the chat right now. We have another office hours in January too. We were talking a lot about how Latinx sites are often endangered, and that is a perfect segue into one of LHC's other really incredible programs, the Endangered Latinx Landmarks Program. Sayla, do you want to share just a little bit about this really fast?
Absolutely. So we are very excited to share that this year, LHC announced the very first endangered program associated with Latinx heritage. This past year, we selected over a dozen sites that are in critical need of historic preservation assistance. And we have sites that are listed, like the one silver dollar bar that Allison spoke on, to that endangerment. That was one of the sites that was listed. We also listed another site that was associated with cemeteries and dealing with things like environmental change and challenges. So we are currently about to open up nominations. We encourage you to look at it. If you know of a site that is threatened or endangered throughout the borderlands or anywhere in the United States and Puerto Rico, we invite you to check out our webpage and we will drop it here. And we look forward to connecting with you through the ELL program.
Thank you, Sayla. And if you all are curious about other ways to get involved, we also currently have a call for proposals out for our Congreso events, which will be in August 2026. It's a leadership summit, and you can come and lead a whole session if you want. So you actually submit for this at the same place that you put in your grant application on Submittable. And if you're looking for a way to support LHC, you can always become a member. We have some incredible benefits available to you, and we appreciate any support that you can give. Now I will open it up to any questions, but I'll put me and Allison's contact information on the screen while we do that. I saw that we had one question that was about the emphasis that we have on the borderlands region for Nuestra Herencia. We accept applications from throughout the United States and Puerto Rico. You are eligible even if you are not located in the borderlands. The way that emphasis takes shape is if you are in one of the states listed, Texas, New Mexico, Arizona, California, Nevada, and Utah, you get 5 extra points on the rubric. So it's really not make or break. It's our way of showing emphasis in this region as it is a strategic area for growth for LHC right now, but it is not something that should keep you from applying. If you're not in a borderland state, please still apply. We had two funded projects in Puerto Rico this last year and two in Colorado, both of which were not included in the borderlands definition. So I see that somebody also asked about not being able to attend the upcoming webinar. Yes, if you register, you will receive a recording. I also just put the recording in link in the chat. All recordings will be updated to that YouTube playlist. We also have a question, Sayla, if maybe you want to add to this, what informed the choices that we made in regards to the states that fill out our borderlands region?
Absolutely. So we have focused a lot of pilot programs in Texas because that's where I'm located. For the borderlands, as Patricia said, it is strategic in that we know by mapping and just by statistics that the borderlands region has a ton of historic and cultural sites associated with Latinx heritage. So this is just the beginning of a national phase that we're working on. We will soon be moving into the Midwest, the Northeast, and the Southeast. That said, we are a national organization. It's just the way right now that we are phasing this out because of funding and resources.
Thank you. And yes, of course, Colorado has a lot of Latinx history attached to it. It's just not what we originally included in our map for as of now. But the definitions of these regions are changing as we do more research as well. Any more questions? And like I said, we did have two grant-funded projects in Colorado. Great, great state. And you see our contact information on the screen. Allison, would you like to add any kind of final thoughts about your work with LHC, the work you do now?
Yes, I'm just excited to continue to be part of the LHC community and really excited for this second year of funding for this new program and excited to see the growth that it's done and that it's addressing basically all of the issues that we uncovered through the equity study. So hopefully with time, we'll have more representation on the national register, slowly but surely.
Absolutely. I see we had a question about who to contact to discuss endangered Latinx landmarks. So I put the link to that specific page on our website in the chat, and that would be our Historic Preservation Officer, Hillary. I'll put her email in the chat as well. Making sure I can spell correctly. Yep. Have another question coming in. Can the grant be extended to transnational projects that encompass relevant in Puerto Rico as well as other connected sites in other non-US places in the Caribbean? Unfortunately, no. The projects that we fund have to be based in the United States and Puerto Rico solely. That's where the funds have to go to. So maybe there are other elements of a project you propose to that are involved in broader regions of the Caribbean, but any of our LHC dollars, the money that we provide through this grant, could not be used toward those aspects of the project. Do we have any more questions before we wrap up today? I hope you all feel like you really care about historic designations now if you didn't already. We definitely care a lot about them. Okay, well, yes, thank you so much from Tucson. All right, well, everyone have a wonderful, wonderful day. You have my email if you need us. All right, thank you. And thank you, Cinco Dios, for wonderful interpretation as always.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.